Welcome to Natural Medicine Secrets. I'm Jonathan Otto. Alzheimer's and dementia is something that most Americans realize may become a reality for them or a close family member. It's an ominous predator creeping up in the background that we all fear as we get older or as our family members get older. But up until this point, we've been taught that it's unavoidable and irreversible. But is this really true? Are many of us inevitably headed to this disease of the mind? According to Alzheimer's News Today, 44 million people worldwide are living with Alzheimer's disease or a related form of dementia. They also report that every 65 seconds, someone in the US develops Alzheimer's or dementia. What staggering statistics! It's no wonder that we feel helpless and overwhelmed when dealing with this crisis. But amazing new science is revealing that Alzheimer's and dementia doesn't have to be permanent or even inevitable. Not only can we actually reverse the effects of Alzheimer's and dementia, but we can avoid ever developing it in the first place. Imagine being able to help a family member who is suffering with this disease, being able to help them turn their life around and be able to bring back their mind in a way you never thought possible.
Well, when I was growing up, I had a grandfather who had dementia, a strange malady, and when I started my medical career 47 years ago, I was aware of dementia, but it certainly didn't occupy the huge space that it does in the public awareness now. And the public is rightfully frightened of going into their advanced decades and losing their ability to reason and to remember. So it's a very frightening thing. And it used to be this strange, we don't know the cause, it's just getting older. But as science has marched on, it's become evident that it's not just getting older. There's people well over 100 that are bright and sharp and clear and certainly not demented. So it's not an artifact of age. And as we look at all the rest of the diseases in the body, the same basic patterns keep showing up again. It's both inflammation happening in the tissues, and blood flow certainly has a lot to do with the health of any organ. And when we look in the brain, we're now finding that there's often an element of inflammation in depression and in dementia. And also blood flow.
Of my four grandparents, the most dynamic was my dad's father, Jack Kahn, Jacob Kahn, and he ran a big furniture chain. He wore bow ties and pink shirts and had a pink car when I was growing up. He was a giant of a man, but last 10 years of his life just decimated by Alzheimer's, ended up in a nursing home, have, vivid memories of the best times as a child with him, and then towards the end of his life just watching a human deteriorate. Very sad. So on a personal level, I care a lot about brain health. And on a professional level, the interesting connection is, other than just some obvious connection between heart disease and brain health.
What was it like seeing your grandfather in that state where,
Yeah. It's, so many people are going through it because of the frequency of Alzheimer's dementia or post-stroke dementia, multi-infarct, it's called multi-stroke dementia. It's terrible. It's terrible to imagine that the average lifespan in the United States is 79 years, but actually the health span, the years of your life that you aren't totally encumbered with doctor appointments, medication, surgeries, deteriorating health, pain, suffering, Alzheimer's being one of the worst. It's 63 years. In the last 16 years of your life, that's a sixth, a fifth of your life is spent dealing with declining health, pain, and suffering, and watching my grandfather, really deteriorate to a person such a fraction of what his full potential was, his full reality was younger in life. It was terrible. I don't think I'd remember it if it was mild. I remember it so vividly because it really was just terrible. I so much loved him, and he passed away. And I deal with really dynamic, driven business owners, entrepreneurs, health professionals and such, lawyers, accountants, and they are concerned. These people are concerned about burnout. They're concerned about their capacity to continue to function. They're concerned about not having time to really create a lifestyle they know is probably healthier than the one they're following. Time to sleep, time to exercise, time to unwind, time to create good food or find good food, time to avoid chemical toxins in the environment. They're concerned about all that. They just don't quite know where to turn.
Understanding the root cause of dementia and Alzheimer's is what can allow us to begin to know how to address it. One key component in many cases is brain inflammation. This inflammation can be caused by various culprits. The important thing to understand is that any kind of chronic disease is usually triggered by something that's actually within our control. Though we may have a genetic predisposition, if we can take certain steps to support our body's immune function and keep ourselves healthy, we can avoid triggering that genetic abnormality and prevent it from ever playing out in our lives. Some of these triggers that can ignite inflammation and brain diseases are nutrient deficiencies, poor nutrient absorption, heavy metal toxicity, and even parasites. Because of our depleted soils here in America, much of our food is lacking the nutrients we truly need. There are actually microorganisms in the soil that allow the plant to be able to absorb the nutrients from the soil. However, since we spray most of our crops with pesticides and herbicides, these chemicals either kill the microorganisms or cause them to go dormant, which makes them unable to facilitate the plant in taking in the nutrients from the soil. And therefore the plant ends up even lower in nutrients. Then on top of that, the foods that we eat have affected our bodies in such a way that we're not producing enough digestive enzymes so that our foods aren't breaking down properly so that our bodies can't absorb them. So depleted soils, poor nutrient absorption for the plant, and then poor absorption in our bodies can all lead to deficiencies that we may not know that we even have. Furthermore, according to a study done in 2003, nutritional deficiencies can cause a higher absorption of heavy metals into the body. These heavy metals wreak havoc on the immune system and they cross the blood-brain barrier, allowing damage to the brain. This damage may manifest in the form of Alzheimer's, dementia, depression, anxiety, OCD, and other conditions. Parasites also further exacerbate these problems by causing inflammation and more toxicity. Parasites can live anywhere in your body, including in your brain. But even a parasite in your gut can actually be affecting the function of your mind. These parasites also interrupt nutrient absorption. The more nutrients our bodies have, the stronger our bodies become in being able to fight off these problems. Yet, because we live in this environment and culture where we're bombarded with chemicals, toxins, and pathogens, our body may need to have a good herb-based protocol that can help us deal with all of these issues. I think the work of Dr. Michael Merzenich is very fascinating in that he doesn't believe that Alzheimer's is a disease. He believes it's a natural progression of the brain, but it's supposed to be held off.
Yes.
And then just a really quick decline at the end, and so we don't even notice it.
In a way, we do agree. I mean, we think that Alzheimer's, whenever we give talks to somebody, and invariably somebody asks in the audience, how do I know if I have Alzheimer's? And my answer is, you have Alzheimer's. And your neighbor has Alzheimer's, and everybody in the audience has Alzheimer's, and I have Alzheimer's. Because it's not a point, it's a process that starts earlier. Yes, there's about 3% of Alzheimer's that is heavily driven by genes. The particular genes, ApoE4, presenilin 1, presenilin 2, and APP. People who have these genes, they'll get the disease no matter what. But even in that, we're about to publish a paper that an APP, which is Down syndrome individuals, who will get the disease if they live long enough. Even in them, if you control the high blood pressure, cholesterol, and diabetes, guess what happened? You pushed Alzheimer's back. But the other 90-something% are the kind of genes that have to do with lifestyle. Your body's response to lipid metabolism or fat metabolism, your body's response to immune metabolism, your body's response to vascular, your body's ability to get rid of waste. Wait a second, these are not Alzheimer's genes, these are life genes. So if you have bad genes for certain things, if you reduce that risk factor, you are not going to get the disease. If you have bad lipid metabolism gene, let's say you have ApoE4 from 2 parents, and the data shows, and if you live a kind of life where you're having good lipids and you're not taking bad lipid, your cholesterol is not high enough, you actually push the disease back. So this has to do more with lifestyle and not a lesion or one molecule that causes the disease. It's much more complex than that.
Wow, that's fantastic, because I think that one of the things that comes up here with the genetic issue is that with cancer, we've seen that the maximum that the genetic factor can influence cancer is the maximum up to 5%, and it's typically more like 1 or 2%. And so then it just leaves people in a situation where we say there's no more excuses. We can see that it's really down to our choices, because we can shift the genetic predisposition we have. It's not predestiny, it's disposition.
Absolutely. I mean, there are diseases that are genetically driven. Huntington's disease. If a person has it, If the son, let's say, has the gene which is on chromosome 4, and if they have this many repeats of this one codon, we know when they're going to get it and how much. But majority of chronic diseases are multi-genetic and have to do more with epigenetics, meaning the environmental influence on genes. Majority of the chronic diseases. So the sooner we accept that, then we start worrying less on the gene, and more on the environmental factors that affect the gene. The food, the environmental factors, the air, the pollution, the toxins, and what we do around the home and life and everything else. And it's not blame. So some people say, oh, so are you, by doing this, are you blaming the person that has the disease? It has nothing to do with that. It's like saying that somebody who has a heart attack and has high cholesterol levels, I'm blaming him for that. No, it's about creating the environment, the habits, and the resources so that people can actually live a vibrant life, but with the good choices. That they can make the good choices because of the availability, resource, and everything else.
The main things that's causing brain issues that we're seeing right now is chronic toxicity and chronic infection. And then we could also pile on the fact of just our food supply is very poor right now, and our stress level is very high. We've got those factors that are basically going against us. And there's certain toxins, like heavy metals, that love the brain. We know aluminum loves the brain. We know mercury, and that's probably the biggest one, loves the brain. I mean, there's been studies where people have had mercury toxicity compared to a normal healthy brain, and you can see that the brain is basically just shriveled up. That mercury toxicity has literally caused so much inflammation that it's basically killed the brain cells and really brought down that normal function. And looking at Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, I mean, just having brain fog, I can't think. Wait, what did you say? Can you repeat that? You know, things like that. Those are early signs that our brain isn't optimized, that it's not functioning. So we need to give a lot of attention to the brain. But as you said, the body is connected, all aspects. So what happens in our digestive tract is going to directly impact our gut. And I believe that heavy metals, I believe pesticides, these are creating inflammation within the body that are then damaging the cell receptors. So what do I mean by that? So our cells will basically produce a molecule or a chemical that gets sent off to trigger another cell to do something. Well, how it does it, it's got a receptor. It's like ears. So you say something, I hear it. Well, if I put an earplug in there, now it's hard for me to hear what you said. And you might have to start yelling. You have to say it multiple times. And I'm like, whoa, why is Dr. Davidson not listening to me? Why is he not doing that? Because I can't hear. That's what toxins do. Toxins are earplugs for our cells, where they start binding on to these receptors, or they create inflammation and actually damage them. Now we can't hear. So it's like, maybe it's actually not a, molecule or hormonal problem within our body. It might actually be a communication. It might be actually a receptor, like a listening issue, where our body can't hear.
I'd been going around for years trying to get help because I was sick and my husband was sick and we didn't know what was going on. I'd been to have a dental filling done, and they took an amalgam out of my mouth and I swallowed it. A very large amalgam, and after that I got Bell's palsy and I had really bad nerve damage in my mouth, agonizing nerve damage, and then they put me on high dose antibiotics, painkillers for 3 months, and it just wouldn't go away, and I had a crooked smile for a little bit and it would come and go, and got other symptoms, brain fog, forgetfulness, and then I got arthritis in my hands. I thought I'd broken my hand, and my husband started getting sick too, and we just kept getting sicker, and then we started getting very forgetful, and we'd go out in the car and we couldn't remember where we were going, and but the worst thing was when we started having seizures at night. I watched the free series of the autoimmune system illnesses, and I just thought, that's it, that's what we've got. We had tests for Lyme disease and it came back positive. We had seen a doctor that had put us on high dose antibiotics though, and that just made us worse. My liver crashed then, and then I met you, and I'm sure I was nearly dead because I thought, I'm going to die. I'd wake up in the night just trembling. It felt like my whole body was shaking. like I'd watched the free series, but I wanted to keep them to study them and also to help me write about my journey correctly. And so I was in a live question and answer with you, and I think I thanked you and said thank you for saving our lives, because I started doing the protocol. It was like the seizures just stopped. Like as soon as we took the herbs or the other things, we did the protocol, we followed his instructions, it all worked. And I just wanted to thank you, because I would not be here today if I know I would have had a seizure and died. I was that sick. So anyway, I just want to thank you again, Jonathan, for the marvellous things you're doing. I think you're just amazing, saving all those lives, and you're very brave. Yes, very brave indeed. And yeah, where would we all be without you? I don't know.
Hi there, I hope you're enjoying watching this episode of Natural Medicine Secrets. In the Core Gold package, we've included our free Jumpstarter supplement pack that has an amazing combo of products specially formulated to give your health a boost and start getting you on track. Our Jumpstarter pack has Gut Repair 360, Cell Defense, Toxibinder, Parapurify, turmeric and ginger with bioperine, and emergency immune support. We want to give you the opportunity to starting detoxing, fighting inflammation, and healing leaky gut so that you can get to see the difference right away. With this package, you'll get the opportunity to begin to transform your health from the inside out. We want to make sure that you have more than just the information and the supplement starter pack. We want to give you a special gift that will get you started on your personal healing journey. Have you ever wished that you had someone to talk to that was just able to sit down with you and really figure out your health issues? It seems when we go to the doctor's office, the doctor is quick to rush in and out of the room, and many people often feel they aren't fully seen or heard. Considering this, we've added a high-value 40-minute free phone consultation with a health coach who has been specially trained to make sure that you're able to come up with a program that is right for your needs. The value of this consultation alone is worth $199. So make sure you check out all the packages and find out the one that is right for you. Every single one of our packages is covered by a 60-day money-back guarantee. So you risk nothing if you decide to try the remedies for yourself in the next 60 days. To take action today, simply click the button or the banner below to get instant on-demand access now. Now, when it comes to brain health, when we look at what's causing these problems, I'm curious to see what you think about what's the underlying factor, because it's obviously at an all-time high. A lot of people obviously think it's genetic, and then these broad brushstrokes on diet, but what specifically in the diet? You know, what's causing Alzheimer's dementia?
There are things that we need to remove and things that we need to put in. And so what we work on with any of our patients is, we want to remove anything that causes inflammation. And that can be anything from the food that you put on your plate, to the environment you surround yourself with, to what you put on your skin, and to what emotions you deal with negatively every single day. Those are some of the obstacles that we really try to help our patients remove. Because we want to start to figure out where are the gaps, where can we start to bring up deficiencies, and most importantly, how do we identify if they have them in the first place? Because there's a lot of people out there right now dealing with Alzheimer's or dementia or whatever we want to call it, any sort of mental or cognitive issue. What happens for Mr. Jones might be different for Mr. Smith, right? And we've got to look and try to identify as much as we can the underlying causative issues.
So when we're looking at brain health, toxins get mentioned a lot, right? Mercury and these other toxins that deposit in the brain, but we have to look at infection. Infection is a massive piece of why people are actually having brain issues. There's been researchers like Dr. Alan McDonald that's been able to biopsy brains with Alzheimer's and been able to grow spirochetes, Lyme disease, in 100% of the studies of that. And it's like, okay, so Lyme is in the brain of people that are, passed away with Alzheimer's or with dementia. We have to take notice. There's other researchers like Dr. Brian Ballin has shown that chlamydia pneumonia, 17 out of 19 autopsies show that co-infection. We have other people showing different herpes type viruses in a prevalent amount of people that are suffering or really passed away with dementia, with Alzheimer's. And it's like, wait a minute, chronic infection has to be considered too. I mean, chronic infection has to be up on the list, and it makes sense because these chronic infections can cross the blood-brain barrier, right? This protective layer that's not supposed to let things in, certain critters can get through there. Toxins we know will deposit and get up in there.
So there's no substitution for open arteries bringing fresh oxygenated blood to the brain tissue, to any tissue. And when people lose their mental abilities and the pathologists look at the brain, it's clear that the arteries are getting clogged up and inflammation is happening in the tissues. And when they think, what could be the cause? You know, it's probably not a virus, it's probably not cosmic rays from outer space. In all likelihood, it's the food these people have been eating. And again, by definition, we're talking to someone about someone in their 70s, 80s, 90s. So this is 70 years, 80 years of a diet, generally in the West, filled with cooked animal protein and dairy protein and oils and sugars and food chemicals. And this is a toxic brew to be washing through the brain cells day after day and through the arteries throughout the skull. And more doctors of every ilk, the neurologists, the pathologists, radiologists, are all saying that it's probably how the owner of that brain's been treating that brain all these years, and it comes down to the food.
We know how to prevent dementia, but people want to still smoke cigarettes and look for a magic pill not to get lung cancer. They want to still eat pizza and hot dogs, have their white bread, their bagels, their croissants. They want to still have their fried foods and french fries and not get dementia with a magic pill. You know, just take this magic pill derived from this jellyfish, or, you know, do this and do that. You can't poison your brain with these foods and not take in this jellyfish or the nutrients the brain needs, thousands of nutrients the brain needs, saying that twice on purpose, and expect to have brain health in your later years. Your brain's going to get fried. There's no way you can undo it. We have the answer, and the answer can be delicious, and the answer is very effective. And you know what here, it takes some while to achieve it and to learn to like it, but you learn to like it with time. And lastly, here about this brain health, is that living this way takes away your fear. You're not afraid of getting demented. You're not rushing in to get your breasts checked every day because you're worried about you're getting breast cancer. You're not worried about getting colon cancer. You're not fearful of having something strike you down like a heart attack or a stroke. You're living your life at your with joyous abundance and being able to be physically active and mentally active in your later years without the fear or being tortured by medical doctors, putting tubes in the orifices of your body, running back and forth to emergency rooms and medical offices to constantly have medical care being done to you. So, in other words, when you control your health destiny, your life gets more pleasurable in a host of different ways and more peaceful. And you become much more productive, a much more productive person who can be legitimately proud of themselves for your positive effect on humanity and your appreciation of the world around you. When you're a food addict and you're driven by your food addictions, you don't have any appreciation for the world around you. You know what I'm saying right now? Let me just give you an example. I'm eating this passion fruit and I'm cutting it open and I'm drinking that liquid out of the passion fruit and I'm chewing those little seeds in there. I'm saying, isn't this remarkable? Isn't this the most amazing, beautiful thing in the world that this hard shell of a passion fruit protects all this delicious liquid, the water the body needs, clean water, with anti-cancer phytonutrients in a form that's so good for our body. In other words, what I'm saying here is that we can really appreciate the blessing of life we've been given and the blessing of natural foods that sustain us with the nutrients humans need to protect our health. Our health is protected by the natural world. And if we can protect the natural world and the foods that nature gives us, then we can protect our health and have incredible health.
So our brain is intimately connected to other parts of our body. We're not an automobile. We don't just have separate parts that we focus on. We really want to make sure that we're connecting the person as a whole. And our central nervous system, so our brain, has a massive innervation, a massive nerve that goes straight to our gut. And the more that we can support our gut health and our gut efficiency and something called the better we're going to be able to improve everything from Alzheimer's to dementia to bipolar, schizophrenia, go down the list.
We did a review in Parkinson's, and I did 2 years of work in Parkinson's at NIH. In Parkinson's, there seems to be a relationship with food, definitely, and toxins, but especially with elements in the food, external elements, toxins that are involved in people get from environment, and its relationship with Parkinson's. With Alzheimer's, multiple things, but mostly people come from glucose dysregulation or lipid dysregulation. But inflammation seems to be the common path in all of them. Later on, they develop inflammation. So do you see that all these factors that start 20 to 30 to 40 years earlier, but then slowly accumulate, and then you manifest at the end as a disease. So it wasn't a point at 65 years of age. It started earlier and can be stopped earlier if we affect those things. Now, genetics have a factor. Remember I said that your genes of response, inflammation response, vascular response, if you have good genes or bad genes. So if you have good genes, you can do more harm and not get the disease, or you do a lot of harm and get the disease later. But if you have bad genes, you get it later. So what's the answer? If we all assume we have vascular risk, we have immune risk, we have metabolic risk, then you don't do the things that increase your inflammation. You don't do the things that increase your oxidation. You don't do the things that increase your sugar metabolism or insulin resistance. You don't do the things that affect your glucose or lipid dysregulation or lipid metabolism. What does that mean? Well, foods that are whole food, plant-based. Less fat, less animal fats, less saturated fats, less trans fats, which are processed fats, and less sugar or processed sugar. Then whole food, plant-based has all of that. Now, what else increases or reduces inflammation? Exercise. What's the best drug you have for depression and anxiety? 3 times better than any other drug, exercise. Why is that not being sold? Why is there no, instead of a blue jellyfish late night commercial, we don't have an exercise commercial for the brain? Because nobody can charge for it. If you create a nice, fancy commercial, you can charge for that, but you can't charge for exercise. Even chronic stress is the biggest factor as far as inflammation is concerned, and cortisol levels, and the biggest factor as far as shrinking the brain. So what's the answer? Manage stress through good stress. People who have good stress, challenging the brain throughout life, actually have much bigger brains. So do you see, none of these things I can charge for. But these are the real things. They're not gimmicks. They're not bone broth. They're not, vitamin concoction. There are real life complex behaviors. And Aisha and I met around the topic because we both had 2 grandparents each that suffered from this horrible calamity disease, Alzheimer's. And that conversation actually led, after a year, to a marriage and then a journey. The idea behind it was there are a lot of places that have shown evidence where people can live healthfully for long periods of time without certain diseases, such as heart disease, or much less prevalence of these diseases, or cancers, or diabetes. Could that information, that kind of lifestyle, translate into brain diseases? So we chose to come to Loma Linda, which is the only blue zone in US and one of the only blue zones that have been validated through data, major data. And we came here, we were the brain health directors, and Aisha did a residency in prevention and neurology, and I was the director of brain health here. And we started studying the populations and looking at relationship between lifestyle and Alzheimer's and dementia in general. And what we found was remarkable. There was the data that was collected over years. The Adventist Health Study, which is a study that's been collecting data on 100,000 people for decades now, was incredibly robust. And the other thing is the population that's supposed to be the healthiest population lived in this region. Actually, a fair number of them. They live everywhere throughout the world, but the Seventh-day Adventists, actually a large proportion lives in Loma Linda. And we have the clinic here, and we could study and look at the data, and that's what we did. And over 5 years, we collected data on 3,000 people in a region where 50% of the population is vegetarian or plant-based. So you would expect that if this is the major clinic on dementia, that a large proportion of people that came to my clinic out of 3,000 would be the Seventh-day Adventists, or at least the vegetarians. And because they are well aware of the disease, so awareness and access is not a problem. And this is closest, and this is related to the university itself. So, And the numbers we were seeing were just remarkably low. What we were seeing is that among the plant-based component of Seventh-day Adventists, the ones that were mostly plant-based and had lived a certain life, higher education, and were active with the community, the number of people that developed dementia were nominal. We're talking in handful. In fact, the number of people that in total that were vegetarians and plant-based then had dementia were 19 out of 3,000. And more importantly, the ones that were higher educated and also plant-based and more socially active, the numbers were even lower. That was bewildering. I looked at this cognitive test called CVLT, California Verbal Learning Test, which is a very good test for cognitive. More importantly, the ones that kind of data showed up, the ones that were more plant-based had better cognition compared to the next group, which was omnivore, then to pescatarians, to the omnivores. So it was almost like stepwise as far as how people did with cognition and its relationship with diet.
While what we eat is an essential part of helping our bodies to function at their optimum capacity, most adults are at the point in their health journey from living in this toxic environment that they need to find herbs and supplements that can help them create a great internal environment. This will give the body the tools that it needs to undo the damage. Many of us are carrying around years of damage to our systems while we have no idea. Our livers are saturated with toxins, our guts are riddled with parasites, our microbiome is damaged, which is leading to leaky gut, and all of these things are leading to inflammation in the body, including the brain. But there are herbs and supplements that can help your body to produce digestive enzymes, to absorb nutrients, to reduce inflammation, to kill parasites and flush them out, to get the gut cleaned out and to rebuild the microbiome. With an intimate connection between the gut and the brain, these steps can be absolutely essential in healing the body. Many people have simply adjusted their diet but are still struggling with chronic health issues. Yet when they take the time to detox their body of heavy metals and parasites, a sudden transformation takes place. All of the good foods that they're eating are suddenly able to work for them in a whole new way. Herbal protocols can be a way of cleansing and resetting the body. All of these things have a huge impact on the brain and on the health of the mind.
We talk a lot about turmeric, but it is really extraordinary. Now, people in India have been eating turmeric for a long time. The average Indian eats about a half teaspoon a day of turmeric. And a lot of people don't realize that India has one of the lowest rates of Alzheimer's on the planet. It's a tiny, tiny fraction of the rates we have in the United States. Turmeric could be one of the reasons. Also, a lot of Indians eat a plant-based diet. Almost half the population is vegetarian. That could be another reason. Put those two together and you may have some of the answers to why Alzheimer's rates are so low in India. Maybe we could learn something from that.
Many herbs have been used for centuries to heal and aid the body in this incredible synergy that seems to exist in nature. Our bodies recognize herbal components and almost seem to know what to use them for within the system. These are the natural medicines of nature that offer healing capabilities that's ability to work with the body's natural healing systems cannot be replicated in the lab. Just like the herbs and essential oils have a profound impact on health, herbs can also be taken in supplement form to offer life-changing benefits as well. One of these herbs that's been the subject of countless scientific studies recently is turmeric. Curcumin, a component of turmeric, has been shown to have great impact on reducing inflammation in the body. It also helps support immune system function, promotes cardiovascular health, and offers potent antioxidant protection. When combined with ginger, these benefits increase. Ginger contains gingerol, another compound that fights off inflammation and boosts antioxidants. Well of Life offers a special formula which combines turmeric, ginger, and one other key piece of the puzzle. One thing that scientists are finding is that curcumin is difficult for the body to absorb, but when BioPerine, an extract from black pepper, is added, absorption is greatly increased. So with our formula, we've made sure all three of these ingredients are provided for you and working together to provide your body with the best possible support. We recommend using this along with other great tools such as essential oils, a healthy diet, and other supplementation to balance and strengthen your health.
Turmeric with ginger and BioPerine is available as a free gift when you place your order for Natural Medicine Secrets, the Gold Package, today.
So having greens, having beans and lentils, which are incredible sources of plant-based proteins, are phenomenal, and they also come with fiber. Just a very interesting thing about beans. So, you know, people who have sugar abnormalities or they're pre-diabetic, beans are an excellent food for them because the fiber or the complex resistant starches in beans and lentils actually keep the sugar in the gut. Say, for example, somebody had a bean burrito in the morning, and then they happen to just have some sweets, say a donut. You know, all that sugar actually stays in the gut because the person had beans. It's called a second meal effect. Bean has that capacity to keep the sugar in the gut and does not let it go into the circulation too much. And it regulates blood sugar, which is incredible. So beans are very, very important for having it at least, you know, once or twice a day. Other things are berries and, you know, foods and fruits that are very high in anti-inflammatory compounds. The darker berries like blackberries and blueberries are packed with polyphenols, which supply the necessary micronutrients for the brain to heal itself. And there are other vegetables like cruciferous vegetables. As a matter of fact, there have been studies on cruciferous vegetables, and they tend to be phenomenal for vessel health. You know, we have arteries all over our body, but our brain actually has the most number of arteries, more than our heart and our kidneys as well. And it's the most active organ in the body as well. It consumes 25% of body's energy at any given moment. So imagine the circulation of the blood. So whatever you supply it, cruciferous vegetables actually keeps those arteries open. It makes sure that the arteries don't harden up, that calcium plaques or cholesterol plaques don't deposit in the arteries. And it's one of the best foods available. Going into other food products like whole grains, I mean, of course, we're all concerned about how wheat has been modified, and there's always a concern about, you know, the chemicals that we're using as far as agriculture is concerned. So with that, we have some data that shows that they can be quite harmful. So that's a gray zone. It hasn't really been studied very well as far as brain health is concerned. So whenever there's a question mark on something, or when we're not really clear on its efficacy or efficiency, we try to stay away from it. But as far as other whole grain products are concerned, you know, the ancient grains, they provide the necessary vitamins and the proteins and the carbohydrates and the fibers that help the brain grow and thrive. And so, you know, not focusing on one food, but a combination of all these foods is very important to provide the necessary nutrients for the brain.
So what are the ancient grains?
So as far as ancient grains are concerned, you know, quinoa is something that everybody recognizes. And kamut is something that is available. So, you know, including those in our meals is something that I focus on.
That there's only 5 or 6 lifestyle factors that you need to focus on to optimize your health. Not guarantee your health, but optimize your health. Don't smoke. Get some fitness in every day. It can be natural fitness like walking, standing, and bending and such, or it can be at the gym and more intense. That'd be number 2. Number 3, eat a lot of fruit and vegetables, whole grains and legumes. That comes out of these studies. Number 4, alcohol in the Harvard Health Study isn't a no-no, but it's limited alcohol. It's less than 5 drinks a week. Number 5, keep your body weight good. That's one of the interesting findings in the Harvard School of Public Health. It's rather difficult in this country. There's a measure called the BMI, Body Mass Index, 20 to 25, and 3/4 of Americans are beyond that. They're overweight or obese. So it's quite unusual, actually, to be an adult and hit your optimal BMI. But in the Harvard School of Public Health study, optimal aging, optimal longevity, optimal brain health is favored by that. In fact, there have been more recent studies, old ones and just recently. The larger your body size, the smaller is your brain. Some people, my colleague Dr. Daniel Amen calls that the dinosaur syndrome. Big body, small brain. And there's just brand new data that supports some other human data that is a reality. So you favor your brain health by actively working in healthy patterns. You can lose weight in a variety of very unhealthy ways, but we're talking about actively working through fitness and nutrient-dense diets, plants, and keeping your weight optimal, maybe using some calorie restriction or fasting of various types to keep your weight optimal. So that's all consistent with optimal brain health out of the Harvard School of Public Health studies. I'll just say one more. There's an I mentioned the word fasting. There's long tradition in religions on fasting, and the Mormons fast, and Adventists fast, and Muslims fast, and Jews fast, and Catholics fast, or modify their diet around Lent and all the rest. But recently there's been a real focus on using fasting as a tool in terms of something called water fasting. You can find some studies that go back even 100 years ago. Nothing but water for a period of days, medically supervised. There are clinics in this country that practice that kind of medicine, and I emphasize medically supervised because you need to watch blood pressure and vitals and blood sugar and tolerance for all that.
An important thing to note with brain health is, just like the body, the brain has to be exercised to stay healthy. The more we allow the brain to atrophy and just go about the day-to-day monotony of life, the more deteriorated it can become. So on top of supporting the brain nutritionally and cleansing the body, there are exercises that we can do specifically to develop the brain. There have been specific methods designed for engaging the brain to stay active. But also, just being able to keep learning and pushing our minds to expand is a great practice as well. Dr. Sherzai, I'd like to go into some of the unique discoveries you found when it comes to measuring and understanding the brain, and how people can actually conduct some tests to work out how successful or optimal their brain is right now. And this Brain XQ is what you've coined. Yeah. What is it? Why is it relevant?
We have all heard about the idea that the brain we only use 10% of the brain. False. We use 100% of the brain, but probably at 1% efficiency. And then on top of that, what we do as we get older and older and older is the cumulative damage. I use the analogy of a computer, hardware, software. We create tremendous amount of trauma to the hardware, with bad food, with stress, with sleep deprivation. And all of these things are critical. And then when it comes to software, which is the optimizing mental activity, nobody ever in a systematic, organized way works on building brain capacity, maximizing brain capacity. So that was our interest. Brain XQ speaks to brain going beyond, the EQ and IQ ideas, emotional quotient and intelligence quotient, to get into the extraordinary capacity of the brain, XQ. And the extraordinary capacity of the brain can be achieved by optimizing the environment of it, which is nutrition, exercise, stress management, and sleep, and then building on the cognitive capacity, the software. That's critical. And what we have found, let's take one of those components. We talked about nutrition and the importance of nutrition. Nutrition by itself can reduce chance of dementia by 53%, but that's just tip of the iceberg. Good nutrition creates the environment for vibrancy, for growth. Bad nutrition, which is one meal or two meals, with glucose, we call 4 mechanisms of nutrition: glucose dysregulation, lipid dysregulation, oxidation, and inflammation. These are not separate, they're all intertwined. But any one meal can significantly affect that. Now, that shouldn't give you a sense of failure, like it's okay if you have bad meals, but as long as the trajectory is towards improvement, we call it working towards increasing the good foods, working towards eliminating bad foods. That's nutrition. But sleep is another one. There's a reason why we've sacrificed our body for 8 hours, is because those 8 hours are critical. 7 to 8 hours are critical. Sleep has two functions. One of the main functions is memory and thought consolidation. The second component is detoxification. That's critical. We know that one night's bad sleep results in inflammation, oxidative byproducts, as well as even things like amyloid, the bad protein that you see in Alzheimer's, accumulating. One night's bad sleep. Whereas good sleep actually does the reverse. So sleep has a profound effect on the brain and its capacity to restore. Mental activity, the software building of part of that Brain XQ is that connection. We talked about 30,000-fold increased capacity, each neuron creating 30,000 connections. And when you do that in a systematic way, when we showed where you work around your weaknesses and around your strengths. Let's say that you have difficulty with memory, recall, short-term memory. There are actual exercises you can do to build that. Not any, silly little game on a computer, but more complex behaviors that actually can build short-term memory. Memory of verbal capacity, memory of visual capacity, and procedural capacity. Verbal capacity, people think that when I'm born and that's it. We know many studies, many people have done it, journalists have done it, where they've actually won memory competitions, where they could memorize 52 decks of cards. Imagine memorizing 52 decks of cards. And this was not a genius. It was a person that knew techniques. And although techniques seem like short-term endeavors, but they actually also help long-term. So you can build that capacity to memorize. Processing speed, processing capacity. You can do that all the time. People have done it. People who play chess, they're not all geniuses. They actually learn how to process higher and higher and higher levels of capacity. I'm just giving you some examples. Same thing with visuospatial capacity. And all these realms of brain capacity can be expanded, but in a systematic way, not ad hoc, not by luck. So that's what we focus on our patients, besides just the hardware, but also software. But one thing that people might be a little disappointed in, there are no gimmicks. It's real life activities that really challenge. And one of the things is meditation. For us, meditation does one main thing, or mindfulness, or whatever technique you're using, is build focus. Focus is the gateway to cognition. Focus is the gateway to higher consciousness. If you don't have good focus, forget about building memory, forget about building processing speed. As it happens, one of the first things that happens when you get older, your focus centers are affected. But it actually is exponentially affected in our Western life, where we're multitasking, doing 50 different things. I tell people there's no such thing as multitasking. There's only doing multiple things badly. And in doing so, you create more stress, more urgency, and not really building that focus center of the brain. So you can actually do this in a systematic way, real life way, and build better capacity. Forget about just avoiding Alzheimer's, but build brain capacity at any age.
Yeah, I was the senior author in that. The meta-analysis, which is a very difficult studies to do, because you have to collect the data from all the other scientists that have done the study. They have to respect you, they have to give you the data. They gave us the data. We ran the data. And what we found is the kind of cognitive activities that were most beneficial for people at risk for dementia were complex activities. Not so much Sudoku or following a little dot on a screen. Complex real-life activities like playing a guitar or a musical instrument, learning to sing, learning a new music language, learning to dance, leading a group, management, volunteering, complex activities. And the second thing is work around your weaknesses. If you find out that you have difficulty with memory, do games or activities that challenge your memory. If you have difficulty with executive function, which is process, then do the kind of activities that challenge that process. If you have difficulty with focus, then participate in activities that challenges that focus. It's in that context that you actually grow the brain, and it's significant. Because we know when you participate in these kind of complex activities, you reduce your chance of dementia by as much as 48%. That's the significance here. That's what we learned. That didn't come from our data, that came from another data piece, but the totality of the research that we looked at showed that that it reduces the chance of dementia by as much as 48%.
Psychiatrists try and treat attention deficit and depression and anxiety and schizophrenia, and they don't examine the organs. So in my training and actually in my own personal experience, I am aware that you can do a blood flow study of the brain. It has the name SPECT, S-P-E-C-T, and have to inject certain chemicals into the intravenous line, and a patient will be within a machine that detects radioactive emission from the brain, called a SPECT scan. But you can create an image very detailed of the brain, and it's quite remarkable that there's patterns that develop and people are trained to read them. You can see signs of previous trauma that frankly weren't expected, childhood injuries and other things that seem to actually be detected by the SPECT brain scan and can lead to altered treatment, altered therapy, that it's actually brain disease. It's not just a mental health issue, it's a brain physical problem. There are different patterns of attention deficit disorder, different patterns of anxiety, different patterns of depression. It's a very large database in the medical literature how you can use this SPECT brain scan to gain further imaging. And probably the best example, they've studied many NFL players who obviously are subject to brain injury from trauma. and identified using SPECT brain scans various patterns and types of brain trauma. And then with time, with therapy, with nutrition, with fitness, with weight loss, with supplements, with herbs and such, can re-examine them and show that there's improved appearance, that they have a more beautiful brain with time.
And there are ways you can test your neurotransmitters, very simple, urinary panels out there that you can do to see what's going on with your neurotransmitters. There are also panels like an amino acids profile, for example, that can give you a decent idea of what's happening with your neurotransmitters.
I think the big picture here is that we have multiple modifiable factors that are influencing our genes to express one way or the other and result in symptoms like cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, neurodegeneration, right? And so we need to identify which types, right? With Dr. Bredesen, as an example, he really worked on trying to figure out what are the different types, and not that you're getting labeled with one type versus another. We're just seeing which one in your life is raising its hand the highest, right? So type 1 is inflammation, 1.5 is glucose toxicity, type 2 is hormonal or atrophic. So we have atrophic, we have loss of hormones or hormonal disruption, as well as loss of nutrients, nutrient deficiencies. Type 3 is toxic, mold, Lyme, exposure to heavy metals, right? Type 4 is vascular, and then type 5 is traumatic. And so when we're able to kind of figure out which one of these is raising its hand the highest, then we can come in with the right things and recommend the right lifestyle changes, the right supplements, herbs, medications to help create that balance and that result that we're looking for of brain health, or of if it's toxins that are interrupting or causing atrophy of the hippocampus, the main center for memory, then we know how to go about redoing that. And then the herbs and things can help with the rebuilding process of those tissues.
And what are the types of things people can take for brain health to help improve their clarity, mental focus, memory, improve depression, anxiety symptoms?
Well, again, the supplement, the herbs, do not treat the symptom. It's treating the underlying cause. Then you have to understand what's causing it. So if someone has memory issues, then you have to ask, is that memory issue caused by a cortisol problem? If it is, then you can use things like valerian root, passion fruit extract to kind of dampen some of that stress response. That's one way you go about it. Or is that cortisol response that's causing memory problem caused by an infection? In that case, you got to do a colon cleanse, or you got to take something that's antibacterial herbs like garlic or caprylic acid and things like that to get rid of the pathogen so that you're decreasing cortisol and stress on the body. So memory loss is a symptom, but what's causing the memory loss? If it's a gut infection versus metal, then we use chlorella, or liver support, or versus stress. Maybe they just need to meditate and quit stressing and change the priority in their life so they're no longer stressing instead of taking a supplement. Or they may need to do all three of them. Yeah. It's all about just addressing as root as possible, and if people don't have resources, then they just need to be aware by watching shows like this, by listening and learning, so that they can become aware of their symptom and then get education about where that symptom is produced or how it's produced, so they're addressing the mechanism of what's producing the symptom instead of, oh, this is good for the eye, but what's causing the eye problem? So, certainly nutrient depletion is true. There's tons of studies that shows that apples today is not the same apple 40 years ago. So we know that to be a fact. So it's a big problem. And how do you improve that? Well, you can replace, right? So you can take a great quality multivitamin mineral supplement. There's many on the market. But I would say on top of replacing the minerals, it's absorbing the mineral, right? So if your absorption is improved, then you may be able to extract what limited amount of nutrient or the decreased nutrient that's in the existing food. So work on absorption, but if needed, add more nutrient in by taking some type of supplement. I would say to improve brain function, typically it depends on what is causing the brain dysfunction. We see thyroid problems, we see leaky gut, we see autoimmunity, we see inflammation, we see heavy metal toxicity. So it's almost like a step-by-step process of working through all those. So if somebody already worked on detox, you might need to go to the next step. Okay, what else is there? Have you already done a protocol to support leaky gut? Okay, you do that, still have an issue. Okay, have you have some tests done to find out if you have an underlying toxicity or infection? The point is, if what you're doing got you better, great. What else is left? Then you got to do something different perhaps to get through that gap, to get that further improvement. Don't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. You must be willing to adapt and be open to learn new things, because there's new things being discovered all the time about health, about microbiome, about brain function.
Before you continue this episode, you might want to take a minute to check out one of our best custom formulas which we've developed for toxin and heavy metal detox, ToxiBinder. ToxiBinder, while being an excellent chelation agent and aiding in eliminating toxins from the body, is also extremely helpful for the liver, the greatest detox organ, but also for the kidneys and immune health. A couple of the key ingredients in ToxiBinder include humic and fulvic acid. These substances are bioactive compounds that bind toxic and inorganic metals and remove them from the body, as well as acting as scavengers against free radicals. Another unique qualifier of fulvic acid is its ability to cross the cell membrane, thus extracting toxins on a more effective level than other chelation agents. Fulvic acid is able to work in combination with these other chelation agents to boost their detoxifying power. ToxiBinder also includes other amazing compounds such as cordyceps mushrooms, silymarin, uva ursi leaf, yucca root, dandelion root, rhodiola rosea, and lipase, all of which, when combined, are effective and powerful remedies in detoxifying the body, supporting a healthy liver and kidneys, fighting free radicals, and boosting the immune system. ToxiBinder is a standout detoxifier with an ingredient combination that you won't see anywhere else. We've heard so many incredible testimonies from customers who have been using this, as well as our other Well of Life products. Get ToxiBinder as a free gift when you place your order today for Natural Medicine Secrets.
And of course, they're especially using herbs when people have emotional problems like anxiety or depression can be very helpful, or sleep or insomnia can be useful. What I utilize for people usually with depression is to fix the fatty acids, extra omega-3 fatty acids, but also give them a mixture of 5-hydroxytryptophan and saffron and SAMe. Those three things in conjunction with the fatty acids, and usually light therapy, and like you said, exercise, but a lot of people who are severely depressed just can't get up and can't get around to do exercise. We got to get them depression to lift, and then we can help, then they would want to exercise more. But of course, getting out there in the sun, in a warm, especially in the morning, is great for them too. And sometimes with sleep or anxiety, we give them some L-tryptophan with something like lemon balm and maybe some mixture of herbs that are a little milder, like passion flowers, nettles, skullcap, a few other herbs mixed with maybe a little extra lemon balm and L3, and we also add L-theanine to that too, theanine to that. So it's lemon balm, theanine, and L-tryptophan. So we can use these things because the toxicity or the harm is going to be minimal or none at all, and it'll help people avoid the use of medication. And the use of medications definitely have more severe side effects because they can make people dependent on them, and they can't get off them, and they have more toxicity and potential risky side effects.
In terms of, I love natural medicine. Of course, I got no schooling in natural medicine in traditional practice, which is, as I say, now been 3 decades. I had to learn on my own, learn it in classrooms, but outside the standard world. But of course, herbs are plants, spices are plants. Many of the approaches I use for cardiovascular and brain health none are animal-based. I mean, there's no dried cow adrenal glands in my practice. So in terms of herbal, there is the famous tree, the ginkgo tree, and there is the approach of using a supplement of ginkgo leaves in a capsule and a tablet, with some idea that improves brain blood flow and improves memory and cognition. I don't think it's resolved, but there certainly is some data to support the idea that ginkgo may provide better overall brain health. In terms of spices, sort of not exactly an herb, we know that the brain can become inflamed. Inflammaging, or inflammation and aging is a word out there, and brain inflammation is a topic. Inflammation, chemicals, and destruction of tissue by white cells and the whole reaction. So societies that eat a lot of turmeric, of course, a root vegetable that you can buy the whole root in a grocery store, sort of unusual shape and color, but you can slice it and eat it and juice it and add it into stir fries. You can buy turmeric powder, of course. I'd always recommend organic sources. But societies that eat the most turmeric have the best brains association. So these, again, are association studies. There is actually a wealth of data about how turmeric actually works in terms of the biochemistry and how it alters pathways of inflammation, so it's not just observing that societies that are generally traditional turmeric users have best brain health. It's also the biochemistry of turmeric affecting cholesterol for the better, blood sugar for the better, inflammatory pathways for the better. So that's rather cool stuff. Blueberries fall, and again, not exactly an herb, but blueberries get a special shout out in the world of fruits for brain health. A lot of people call them brain berries because of the specific polyphenols and anthocyanins and flavonoids and these wonderful chemical words, but the innate plant mysterious advantage there is to eating berries in general, but blueberries for brain health. Going back to herbs, there's a wonderful herb from India that probably the public is somewhat familiar with, and I love the name ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is often called an adaptogen. It helps you adapt to stress without being addictive or without being a narcotic like the current crisis out there, opioids. Ashwagandha can be beneficial for sleep, for stress, for brain health, for blood pressure. It's just a wonderful thing to add in. I use it in the elderly, I use it in the young, sometimes 500 milligrams twice a day, sometimes a little lower if somebody's small or elderly. There's an herb called Bacopa, B-A-C-O-P-A, that often ends up in herbal mixes for brain support, brain health, and it's wonderful. It's from a plant, but there's some data about what it does to enhance overall brain function, brain health. Those are some of the biggest ones. There will be more in the list, something called huperzine, and I like quercetin. Quercetin is a antioxidant herb that can be found in apples, garlics, onion. There's a lot of data right now suggesting it may be one of these magic supplements that may alter aging, may enhance longevity. There's a natural cleaning house process in cells that won the Nobel Prize in Medicine a few years ago called autophagy. Some people pronounce it autophagy. The idea that the garage, which you haven't cleaned out for years, at some point gets so full of junk you can't even park your car in it anymore, and cells in our body, cells in our brain accumulate debris with time, and they become less functional, and your brain won't work as well because of this process of progressive accumulation of debris. Autophagy is the process of actually repairing, replacing, cleaning out, eliminating damaged cells so you have more functional cells, and it may be the quercetin, at least preliminary report, and even more recently there's a substance in strawberries called fisetin, F-I-S-E-T-I-N, that may do the same thing. And it's just amazing. These just come, you can get them in your foods, and not everything has to be a pill or a supplement, but they tend to be studied one at a time and isolated. It's just a little easier, though. Whole foods are always what I'd rather somebody do, is just eat a big bowl of strawberries, blueberries, have salads with onions and garlic, and you're going to get those components I just mentioned without necessarily having to run to the vitamin shop. Rosemary. You can't talk about brain and herbs without mentioning rosemary. Perhaps that's a spice, but Shakespeare 500 years ago talked about memory and rosemary, and subsequent studies show that I think it's rosmarinic acid or some component that's in rosemary actually has quite a direct impact on the brain for better health. So there's a famous city in southern Italy, a little bit south of Naples, Acciaroli, a beautiful coastal town south of Naples, and they're famed for longevity. They're not officially a blue zone, so I don't want to call that out, but longevity, people living in their 90s, good life, good health, and their food is just rich in the local herb. Rosemary grows wildly around there, and I can remember walking the streets a couple years ago, and really in the vegetable markets you see much more rosemary than you'd expect. So little shout out there too, and whether it's an essential oil, whether it's the herb used in soups and such, or whether you just sprinkle it on your food regularly like I tend to do.
Dr. Newsom, let's talk about brain health. Brain health is obviously vital because our relationships are often governed by the quality of how much we protected our brain and fed it with the nutrients that it needs.
Well, first off, B vitamins. B vitamins, vitamin D are all essential nutrients for the brain, the nervous system, right? There are there are adaptogens that work very, very well on the brain. One of my favorites is ashwagandha. Okay, ashwagandha is a East Indian herb. Okay, and it is it's one of those that has a interesting effect. So if somebody is tired and fatigued, right, ashwagandha tends to give them energy. You know, if somebody has anxiety or is really stressed, it tends to calm them down. Okay, really, really nice, you know, adaptogen that works on the nervous system like that. The other thing that it does is it's a neuroprotectant, okay, a brain protector, okay. So when it comes to toxic exposures, when it comes to, you know, chemical type exposures and things like that, it protects against a lot of, you know, oxidative damage that would happen from being exposed to different toxins and things like that. It also helps with buffering like head injuries and things like that. That's another thing, you know, for those playing sports and whatnot. Very, very good for helping with keeping inflammation down in the nervous system and things like that. Nice. I love ashwagandha. Vitamin B12, okay? But B12 with, again, I like this formula. It's not just B12, it's B12 with B complex, okay? So you're not just getting one particular nutrient here, you're getting the group, the whole band, if you will, you know? And this formula is nice in that it's a sublingual formula. So sublinguals are, I mean, they're not you know, a B12 shot, quote unquote, okay? But you wouldn't take a B12 shot every day, okay? Because it's too much if you're taking it on a daily basis, right? Whereas this gets you that little bit whenever you need it, okay? And you can take it a couple times a day, right? Which is way better. B vitamins are water-soluble vitamins, okay? Meaning you can spike the levels of a water-soluble vitamin in your body real high, and it's cleared out of your system in 4 to 6 hours, okay? When you use a sublingual like this, it goes into your system real quickly, right? And it stays there for 4 to 6 hours, and you can replenish it. Let's say you're a student studying, or you're a mom dealing with brain fog, and you got to keep your family, you know, you need to be sharp, right? This is a way you can heighten your sharpness by using these types of things. Let's look at this one. This one is it's a multivitamin mineral supplement that's fortified with different brain nutrients. Let's go through these brain nutrients. DMAE. DMAE is it's a nice brain enhancement. So it's kind of one of those, how do I say, it's kind of like getting your brain to fire on all cylinders, okay? So the misfiring of the brain, okay, it really minimizes when you're using DMAE. It's something that I've used it for studying myself in the past. I've used it for years at different times. We have green tea extract, again another good antioxidant, but not just an antioxidant, it's also a neuroprotectant nutrient. So we get green tea extract in this. Again, that's another antioxidant nutrient, but it's also a very good neuroprotectant antioxidant. So again, something else that would help protect and antioxidize the brain and the central nervous system, all right? We have choline, inositol, N-acetyl L-tyrosine. N-acetyl L-tyrosine, an interesting nutrient. Again, helps support brain function by way of becoming a precursor to dopamine. Okay, so it helps, it eventually gets converted into dopamine. So we can increase the dopamine levels. It also becomes part of, tyrosine becomes part of thyroid hormones. Again, so another thyroid supporting nutrient here. Bilberry fruit, bilberry, again, good neuroprotectant. Grapefruit seed, grape seed. Okay, we got both. Grapefruit seed and grape seed, both good antioxidants for the brain and neuroprotectant. We have olive leaf, we got cinnamon bark, licorice root. All, again, these are, the thing with these is a lot of these are adaptogens that also have neuroprotective capacities. Okay, so the neuroprotective meaning they protect the nerves, protect the brain. They have an affinity to that tissue. Okay. Phosphatidylserine. Phosphatidylserine is excellent for just mental acuity. Okay, again, it's another kind of study aid, if you will, you know. It also has a real interesting effect on like cortisol levels and stress levels, so it helps calm the system, all right? And in response to that, cortisol levels start to drop, so you don't have the jitters and that anxiety and that kind of thing. Really, really helpful. And then huperzine A. Huperzine A is a would be a botanical antidepressant. Okay, kind of works along those same lines as an antidepressant. Really helps to elevate the mood. So nice formula. That's a really nice formula. I would say for overall kind of brain health, and just neurotransmitter support, something along those lines. That's kind of what I would categorize that formula as.
When we're talking about the immune system, when we're talking about brain health, we have to be considering fatty acids. We have to be considering the fatty acids that are on cells, in cells, on our nerves, and DHEA is certainly important for brain health, right? DHEA is an omega-3 fat, and the other one is phosphatidylcholine. Phosphatidylcholine makes up the majority of our cell membrane, and so it's when we have exposures to certain toxins or inflammation or bad fats, they come and they replace those fats, and now we suddenly have a disruption in the ability of the cells to communicate with another. It's almost as if you put a block up between the cells and we're trying to figure out a way to squirm through them. So we have to repair the cell membrane in this process. And so phosphatidylcholine, DHA for the brain are phenomenal fatty acids to be utilizing. EPA is another one. You'll often see the EPA and DHA combined in a product. That's phenomenal. EPA can help with decreasing the inflammatory response, as well as with DHA. But yeah, so if you're putting in nutrients for cell health, for brain health, DHA can be a phenomenal thing to be utilizing.
Fantastic, thank you for that breakdown, that understanding. I think that yeah, people can find these things, they're available, and look for good sources of these types of things. Absolutely. And in this case with DHA, it sounds like you're looking for a high dosage.
Yeah, a higher dosage. So you're looking. Once again, it really all depends on what a person can handle, but we'll often start out with anywhere from 500 milligrams upwards of 2 to 3 grams of omega-3 fatty acids. And it really depends. If they're really inflamed, we might try to push for a little bit higher for a temporary amount of time. The thing with omega-3 fatty acids that you have to be cautious of is if you're on a blood thinner, if you're taking something that thins the blood, there's some studies that show that can cause further thinning of the blood.
Okay, the blue-green algae, I've actually reversed Alzheimer's, just giving people blue-green algae. I published a paper on it. People, one lady couldn't dress herself, couldn't exercise. And after 4 months on this, I think it was 4 months, she was able to dress herself, do exercise, take care of herself. So we can make a difference. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. Now, one of the really good things is choline. Okay, it's in the B vitamin range. It's not B vitamin, but choline is really good. And it decreases the hyperactivation of the glial cells, which inflame the system, if you're eating too much fructose especially. So different kinds of choline. Now, you need choline to build acetylcholine. What's that? It's a major memory neurotransmitter. That's what it is, okay? It also helps with GABA, which is anxiety type of thing. So choline is important. The long chain omega-3s, the DHA in particular, and the EPA, and my research, when I'm looking at the literature, which is where I say my research, right, is somewhere around 1,200 milligrams of DHA and about 400 to 600 milligrams of EPA gives you kind of an optimal brain protection, anti-inflammation, and improvement of overall brain function and brain cell membrane function. Okay, vitamin C is a big player. Your full range of the Bs, particularly the B12 and the folic acid, are big players in the story. I would rate those as a good one. There is a thing called huperzine and resveratrol, both help a lot with huperzine is very good for building up acetylcholine. So those are kind of some of the, I'm going to say vitamin C is very important. Again, the full vitamin C are critical little pieces here in brain function. One of the issues we have is aluminum accumulation in the brain, often from vaccines. And there is a chelator that's real easy, NCD. It's not invasive, you don't take it intravenously. That if people take on a regular basis, it's going to pull the aluminum and pull the mercury, another problem, inflammatory problem. Both of which are in vaccines, but we get them from other places too, to begin to pull the mercury out of the brain and the aluminum out of the brain. Glutathione is another one. That's for toxins, but it's really good for brain function. There is a supplement called DMAE, which increases acetylcholine, which specifically as a neurotransmitter is important for memory type things. Choline is a big player in decreasing brain inflammation and making acetylcholine. And it's also good for GABA aminobutyric acid, another neurotransmitter that helps decrease anxiety and things like that. So as a supplement, the lithium orotate is okay. You know, I've tested myself on all these things.
I think if you're trying to improve brain function, reduce brain inflammation, or even improve depression, there's a lot of data that supports removing from the gluten from the diet is a must. It's a must. It is inflammatory to the brain, to your digestive tract. It can and will affect mood as well. Energy, levels of inflammation. I think there's some core nutrients that you can put in your body. Turmeric is a beautiful anti-inflammatory, making sure your vitamin D levels are healthy. Measuring inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein and homocysteine. So speaking of C-reactive protein, it's a marker of inflammation, causes belly fat, cardiovascular disease, but that type of inflammation responds beautifully to turmeric. Turmeric is so good for inflammation, it's so good for the brain. There's a lot of history to support it, and a lot of people have gotten amazing results using it. Healthy fats, like essential fatty acids, that you're gonna get from things like avocados, and if you can get pure wild caught salmon and extra virgin olive oil, like you said in those blue zone studies, it's a staple. But what do we do with extra virgin olive oil? We don't eat it raw in our salads. We cook with it and we fry stuff in it, and then these oils go rancid, and then they could be harmful to our health. So I think some key nutrients are important. Another one is folate is very important to the brain, and if you have high homocysteine, your brain is getting attacked by inflammation. So are your blood vessels. So I think it's very important to test homocysteine, and if it is elevated, use the appropriate amount of methylfolate, methylcobalamin to bring it down. There's a common gene mutation called MTHFR that can cause high homocysteine levels. Well, this is going to cause major inflammation in your brain and increase your risk for stroke, blood clot, as well as dementia.
According to a study published in 2013 in the Journal of Nutrition and Biochemistry, a gluten-free diet reduces not only inflammation, but obesity and insulin resistance as well. Another study done on rats and published in 2014 found that a maternal gluten-free diet reduced inflammation and diabetes incidence in the offspring. And a third study done in 2013 also showed that the consumption of wheat, but also other cereal grains, can contribute to the manifestation of chronic inflammation and autoimmune diseases by increasing intestinal permeability and initiating a pro-inflammatory immune response. Again and again, the science shows that wheat consumption is highly dangerous and leads to chronic inflammation. It's no wonder that many patients switch to a gluten-free diet and see amazing improvements in their chronic inflammatory conditions or their autoimmune conditions. When you consider the role of brain inflammation in Alzheimer's, dementia, and multiple other diseases, it seems the best choice to remove wheat from the diet. An important point that I want to add here is that wheat was altered in the 60s, before 1994, which was when the GMO laws came in. So it fell under a different category of modification, which was still genetic alteration, but it didn't classify, from a semantics point of view as genetic splicing. So therefore it was not considered GMO. However, from everyone's standards that wants to understand the process, it went from through a process called chemical mutagenesis. So mutagenesis is to mutate the gene, right? So you see that even the words that are used in the chemical process is that to radiate the gene, chemical, and to mutate the gene is a genetic modification, but it doesn't fly under that categorization. So think about that for a second. Many people like Dr. William Davis argue that it is the worst of all GMOs, and you can be getting organic wheat from your local bakery or grocery store, but it is in fact under the 1960s modification that happened and is dangerous and creates intestinal permeability. And just a side fact, how many diseases do you know that are based on an actual trigger that's based on a dietary food, right? Celiac disease, that is directly based on wheat consumption, gluten consumption, wheat consumption. So just think about that for a second. And then many autoimmune diseases are linked back, and it's quite common knowledge that Hashimoto's thyroiditis is linked directly to wheat consumption, and the list just keeps going. So just understand that, and understand that this is a food that you don't need, and you can get the ancient grains if you want to use grains that have not been altered, and they are available to you if you want to take that pathway.
Let me tell you a story. So I've written about consciousness. Human consciousness, the fabric of consciousness is stories. Short stories, not necessarily linguistic, even pictorial stories, but stories nonetheless. And each of us develop these stories. The first set of stories that it creates who you are is in around age 3 or 4, where you create a story of me versus other. Then other stories. So on one of my rounds in the hospital in Loma Linda, we were rounding, and this one patient, we'll call her Miss Collins, that's not the real name. She had mild dementia, but then developed an infection and became catatonic. Didn't talk, didn't respond, was completely non-responsive. Eyes open, but non-responsive for months. So we were rounding, and I asked the residents, my residents that followed, tell me about her. So they say, oh, the sodium is this, and potassium is this, and chloride is this. I said, no, I'm not interested in that. Tell me about her. They were a little irked because they wanted to get done quickly, and said, I don't know. So I said, read the charts. They read the chart, and they go through the list. And around the middle of the chart, somebody said that, oh, she was a piano teacher for 60 years. Okay. Miss Collins. Miss Collins. And then the resident said, she doesn't talk. Miss Collins. No response. Miss Collins. And then I asked, who was a better composer, Mozart or Beethoven? No response. I repeat this 3 times. On the 4th time, I said, Miss Collins, who was a better composer, Mozart or Beethoven? And then a flicker, a connection. And a person that hasn't spoken for months, and a very soft voice comes back and says, looks at me, what a stupid question. We connected. Why? Her central island was music. Somebody who plays who taught music for 60 years. Of course, that's a major island. That's where the secret is. You connect around islands of consciousness, islands of meaning, islands of purpose. When you don't have those islands, or if you don't use those islands, they disconnect, and human consciousness disconnects. We need to connect those islands through meaning, through purpose, through community, through relationship. That's not magical, that's neurological. Meaning and purpose is at the center of consciousness and awareness and disease prevention.
Dr. Shozai, what was the end of Miss Collins' story?
Miss Collins did very well. She never recovered completely. She went back to her baseline, and the way we did this was then started talking to her about music, put music in the background, the things she liked. Her family came and talked to her about music all the time, and she connected more and more. It's those connections that then that created further connections. And that's what we all have to do. Not to lose the connections and regain it, but to maintain those connections, those meaningful connections. And more importantly, at any age, you can create new islands. If you've never played music or a musical instrument, but you always wanted to, start then, at any age. If you never knew a second language or a third language, start learning that. And that creates the connections that will actually create the most resilience, or what we call cognitive reserve. It's actually a very important term. Cognitive reserve is the reserve, the bank account you have against future trauma. So those connections, analogy I give is, here's a piece of information you're trying to get to. It's a metaphor, obviously. And this is you. And so I only got two connections, two axons, neuronal connections. One of them is severed as a result of a trauma, one of them as a result of some vascular event through our life. That piece of information is gone because it only had two connections, right? Now make 30,000 connections to that. What happened? Nothing can sever that. Keep maintaining those connections throughout life. Keep making those connections throughout life. Another thing that shows that evidence of the connections and importance, people who have hearing loss by itself adds 9 to 10% increased risk of Alzheimer's. Same thing with sight. So what's the secret of that? Even ambient noise or just noise in the background keeps those neurons connected. But imagine if it's conversation, socialization. That's much more than just noise.
Loneliness is a growing epidemic. I mean, we know this. I mean, it is actually now classified as a killer. I mean, when people are not connected to other human beings, and social media does not count, there is evidence that you do not experience the same hormonal release, the same pheromone release, the same neurotransmitter release, the same alteration in the waves of your heart or the waves of your brain. None of that occurs with social media. But when people don't have that flesh and blood, face-to-face interaction, a tribe, a community, a relationship, a circle of friends, a good family life, you see a lot of issues. High blood pressure, depression, anxiety, lack of sleep or insomnia, lowered activity of the immune system. And these are problems that are now beginning to creep up. And loneliness is actually a growing health epidemic. And so I think that relationships are something that are incredibly synonymous with health, and something that again, tend to get underemphasized because we feel as though we're hyper-connected, when in reality, our relationship is with a series of zeros and ones. And there are a lot of things that happen when you're in the same room with someone, when you're making eye contact with them. We know that people, have hearts that produce certain electrical rhythms that align with other people in the same room. We know the same thing can be said for brain waves. We know you can feel when someone's stressed out or depressed or an energy vampire, and we know when you can feel that someone's happy and in a good mood and their presence lifts you up. And there's something to be said for that. You simply cannot, whether via virtual reality and glasses and haptic gloves or your social media app, replicate that in any sense.
The other component that seems to be of even higher importance as far as protection for the brain is brain activity, cognitive activity, activities that are more complex. So what is complex? Complexity means activities that activate multiple areas of your brain at one time. Real life activities that activate multiple regions of your brain at the same time. What kind of activities are we talking about? Well, what stands out is real life activities like learning a new musical instrument, learning a new song if you already know a musical instrument, learning new dance, learning a new language, leading a project around film and video. You know, that involves, it's not one column of adding numbers to 9. It's much more complex than that. Let's take playing guitar, for example. When you're playing a musical instrument like guitar, your fingers are moving. That's your motor cortex. You're actually reading the notes. That's your language centers, Wernicke's and Broca's. You're actually being creative. You're right parietal. You're processing and being creative as far as what steps to take next. That's frontal lobe. You're visually processing. That's your occipital lobe. You're emotionally involved. That's your limbic system. That's no Sudoku. That's a brain on fire. That's all aspects of the brain. That's what you mean by brain activity, not a gimmick that somebody can sell and buy. That's what people need to do to bring to their homes. And we say to people, if you want to really develop your brain, it doesn't have to do with clinic or hospital. Those are sick care. Healthcare and brain care is in your home, your community, and most importantly, at your work. What you can do in those realms can protect your brain, not just against Alzheimer's, but give you the ability to have vibrant, powerful brains well into your 80s, 90s, and beyond. That's brain capacity at its fullest. Community is brain activity.
Yeah.
When I'm sitting here in front of you, we're talking. I have to process what's coming to me. I have to read your face. A lot of times it's passive without us knowing, but actually that's involving the brain. A lot of times I have to listen to what you're saying and contextualize it. That's three-dimensional thinking. That's all of the brain. I have to come up with a response. I have to be sharp. That's focus. Remember, one of the areas that's first affected in aging and in diseases is focus. That's all of the brain. Communication is the best brain activity. You don't have to buy a game on a computer. Start communicating with a friend. That's much more cognitive activity. My mother plays cards. She was a politician. She was a chess player, multilingual. Now she gathers people, she's 83, and plays cards at home. And that, to me, is the best form of brain activity. The card game itself challenges the brain, but then you're communicating with friends and everybody else. That's brain activity. Going to church, it's interacting with others, reading a scripture, memorizing, recalling, emotionally being involved in it. Remember, emotional memory. There's a reason why your limbic system, your emotional system, is connected right next to your memory system, especially short-term memory. And there's a reason why the best way to encode short-term memory into long-term memory is by emotional encoding. So if you're in an emotional environment with friends, with community, with church, that does so much more than silly dot on a screen being followed or adding some columns to 9. I tell people, get engaged. It doesn't have to be the church. It could be a community center. It could be volunteering. It could be leading a project. That's the highest form of mental activity by far. Most importantly, nobody can charge you for it.
Talk to me about the herbs that people can use.
So I think the most common one people go to is milk thistle. It's been around a long time. It's going to be around a long time because it's effective. Dandelion root is another one that is quite good. Another thing I'll mention is N-acetylcysteine is a precursor to glutathione, and it's a very, very important detox pathway. It helps us to eliminate a significant amount of toxins. So glutathione is a very important detox pathway. Another thing is methylation. Methylation is very important. So you can support healthy methylation by eating foods high in folate. Those are going to be your dark leafy greens. Those are extremely important. Another thing is eating cruciferous vegetables contains something called indole-3 carbinol, which helps your body push out toxic estrogens, which are not a metal, but have been linked to a lot of chronic health problems, hormonal imbalances, and cancers. So I think that those are some things you can do in your diet, as well as take nutritionally to help support detoxification.
And so what particular herbs could be used then to come in and to help remove toxins from the liver, kidneys, and even the lymphatic system? What do you know as being effective in those stages of detoxification?
There are some things found in nature that are very good for detoxification, even just such as parsley and cilantro. You know, just something as simple as fresh lemons have detoxifying powder, apple cider vinegar. So I know those are more foods than herbs specifically. You know, the herbs are the things like the milk thistle, the dandelion, the methionine, the cysteine, methylfolate, which is technically a vitamin, not an herb, things of that nature.
Why are they effective?
Because they're not all in the same category, but a majority of them push your own detox pathways.
Got it.
So you're not forcing a heavy, aggressive detox onto your body. What you're doing is you're giving your body the precursors that it needs to help your detox pathways function more efficiently.
If we were to go to herbs that help with inflammation of the joints and that
Yes.
type of thing, where would you go there?
100% all day, every day, turmeric. Turmeric. I don't want to discredit ginger. Turmeric and ginger are in the same family.
Yep.
The thing with turmeric and ginger is, especially turmeric, is it's not very bioavailable. So ideally you combine it with some type of pepper, like bioperine, which is black pepper, to help enhance the absorption.
Why is it called bioperine?
Bioperine is a form of black pepper that is enhanced in a lot of supplements to help enhance their bioavailability.
And it just maximizes the ability.
It helps the absorption. Yeah,
Some people
because
say it's up to 100 or more times the effectiveness.
yes, because turmeric doesn't absorb well. This is something that is just a fact about turmeric. So how can you enhance the absorption of turmeric if you're going to take a turmeric supplement? Eat it with a meal containing fat. And if the supplement doesn't contain a pepper, you can add pepper to that meal. But ideally, you know, a supplement would contain those things for you. Boswellia is so good for inflammation. It's derived from frankincense. And last but not least, I'm a big fan of black cumin seed oil. And even using it, when you're essential fatty acid deficient, you're gonna have more inflammation.
If there's this blood-brain barrier, Jonathan, that protects things from getting through and these things actually get through, then how are they gonna get out easy? Right? Because it's not just a protection to keep things out, it's protecting things that are in there as well too. So it could make it more challenging. And that's why when people, you know, come to me and they're like, Dr. J, I don't think I have Lyme disease. I guarantee that they have some type of chronic infection within their body, whether it's Lyme or not. And the important thing is not to wait until you have a symptom. The important thing is to bring these levels down and to start optimizing the body. Because when the body isn't healthy, when the immune system's suppressed, when you have these infections and co-infections, you'll develop more and more of them, which is then going to put you at a higher risk of all these other diseases, which seems like Alzheimer's and dementia are going to be on that category because of the research we found with these bugs being extracted from brains of people that passed away with these conditions.
So then what do we do about these chronic infections that are in our body that are affecting our brain and that are leading to people dying way before their time of these neurodegenerative diseases? What can we do?
Well, we got to clear the infection out. But of course, as soon as you hear like, oh, infection in the brain, let's go after it, that's not the first place to start. It's the mistake that we make with detoxification. Oh, I've got heavy metals, let's jump into detox. I did that, and I caused a reaction in my body. I caused a reaction so bad that I was literally about to go to the emergency room because I was so sick. It's because I did no prep before it. I didn't get my body ready for it. And so whether we're looking at the brain or we're looking at some other part of the body, drainage is so important to prepare the body to get it ready. And what does that look like? That is supporting the colon, making sure you're pooping. That is supporting the liver bile duct system and also the kidneys. That's supporting the lymphatic system, which the lymphatic system has fluid inside of it, 2 times the amount of fluid than the cardiovascular system. 2 times the amount. And when's the last time we've given some attention to our lymphatic system? It's a huge focus of our immune system. So if we're struggling with chronic infection, a lot of our immune system is actually in the lymphatic system. But I like to categorize that in the drainage part because we got to make sure that these fluids are moving. If they're stagnant, then what happens is our core body temperature drops, these fluids don't move as well, the pathogens thrive better, and inflammation increases. So movement is life, not just exercise, but also drainage, also lymph. How does this connect with the brain? The brain has a direct connection. This is new in science, right, as of a couple of years ago, that our brain has a direct connection to the lymphatic system, meaning our brain drains. Well, if somebody has brain fog, cognition, headaches, sensitivities, pressure, or something worse than that, like a diagnosed condition of the brain, I can tell you and almost guarantee brain drainage stinks. That the brain can't drain. Because when we're active, we have cells within our brain called glial cells. And these cells, when we're actually awake and active, will start to fill up they'll actually accumulate fluid. They'll increase in size. They'll actually increase like 60% throughout the day. When we go to bed and when we sleep, that's when these cells shrink. That's when our brain drains. So if we never enter a deep sleep, our brain's not having a chance to really drain itself. Now, here's where it all connects to this, Jonathan. If you're not pooping, then everything above is backed up, including the liver bile duct, the kidneys, the lymphatic system, and guess what? The brain drainage in the lymphatic system. There's a fancy name called glymphatic, which just means you're putting the word glial cell and lymphatic together, and now we have a fancy name called glymphatic, but just think of it as the brain drainage system. So if you want to say, okay, I'm gonna focus on brain drainage, I understand how important it is, the first step is making sure you're pooping at least 2 to 3 times a day. You might say, well, isn't once enough? If you have health issues, 2 to 3 times a day, not to the point where you're watery. Focus on the liver bile duct, focus on lymphatic system, because once those are open, then the brain can actually drain. We know there's essential oils such as like frankincense, or otherwise known as boswellia, that'll actually help to open the brain up and brain drain. It'll actually help to drain the fluid and clear that out. So if you have pressure, you have a headache, you can put a drop on your hand, put it on your temple, across the forehead, rub it across, and usually within 15-20 minutes, you feel typically better because it's helped to drain. The problem is, what if your lymph is backed up? What if your liver bile duct's backed up? What if your colon's backed up, or any of those? Then the brain has nowhere really to drain. So if you're like, well, this didn't work for me, well, because you have to understand that drainage, there's actually an order, right? There's an order of importance, and so we need to work out what's the base of that funnel. What's the thing that's holding you back, if anything, in order to get the brain to drain?
What's there to do for people that are suffering with brain problems?
Well, if you start right now, let's start at the beginning where you don't want to have this happen to you, okay? So what's the recipe for having high cognitive function till you die, all right? The first thing is you eat well, stay hydrated, lose weight. Use your brain, okay? You've heard use it or lose it. It's true. Exercise. Exercise causes the production of something called brain-derived neurotropic factor, new pathways in the brain. Learn Spanish, play a musical instrument. Almost every state in the country has a law that if you're 60 years old or older, you can attend as many classes as you want at public universities and community colleges. Now, if you want to get a degree, you got to pay, but if you just want to go learn religions of the world, or my father, for example, when he sold his company, he took horticulture classes at Ohio State University, earned the equivalent of a master's degree, and worked in the experimental garden. This is all good stuff to help your brain, all right, and to stay actively, cognitively engaged. Social interaction, read books, all that. Okay, so if you have a family member who's showing the early signs of dementia, what you do is all that, all right? So, and I'll tell you an interesting story. This is a good client story to tell. A friend of mine who happened to be a healthcare professional, her mother moved in with her, and mom was starting to develop some cognitive problems, and in fact, it had gotten so bad that my friend didn't think her mom should even be involved in the phone call in the beginning. She said, I'm not sure she would even pay attention. Well, when I started asking questions, what had happened was older people are notorious for not eating enough food because they don't have schedules. Like, I'm on a schedule that tells me it's time to eat, that sort of thing. They don't drink enough water. Dehydration is epidemic in the older population. And their life starts to kind of constrict unless there's something deliberately going on that keeps them, meeting with people and doing things. So what had happened to this woman's mom, not eating enough, not drinking enough, dehydrated and underfed, and then not enough engagement socially. So we got her involved in a church. So we fixed the food and water problem and got her involved in a church where they had people to pick her up and take her to things, and got her back interested in even watching videos on a tablet, anything that keeps the brain. And what was really interesting is within a few weeks, just a few weeks, this woman started coming back to life. And she remained a part of my practice for about another 8 years. She died when she was 97 or 98 years old, fully cognitively engaged in life. And I don't remember what she died of. At 98, something goes wrong, but the point was that here was a person who was on her way to warehousing and came back because it was early stage and did really, really well. It's amazing just having people to talk to and having something to do and a place to be. And I've seen this in my own dad. He's 89. He doesn't take any drugs. His IQ is higher than his cholesterol right now. But after my mother died, we experienced this in my own family. After my mother died, there was so much to do. You know, sell the family house and got to find another place to live and all kinds of things going on. And that kept him busy for a while. And then my sister and I noticed things were not so good. And the reason was there's nothing to do. So he started working for her, he started working for me, and we saw such a change in our father from just having thinking to do. You know, at my office he was doing stuff that required a lot of mental effort, and now he's not working for either of us because he's found other things to do that he likes better, and that's all good. But you know, at 89, he can take care of himself, and he's physically really strong, and all that sort of thing. And that's what you hope for in old age, not being warehoused someplace because you don't remember your name or where you live.
Yeah, to have purpose, you know?
Yeah, people need purpose in life. It's very important. It's an important part of survival for a cancer patient. If you don't have a reason to live, you probably won't.
Now we're approaching this territory, but we're obviously willing to do it because people's lives are at stake. And we found...
And we're seeing the results.
We're seeing the results.
Right.
You guys are, right?
Right, absolutely, yeah. And so...
What kind of results?
Results from where, I think the most profound one is when you're able to give somebody a piece that they've lost back, right? A thing that they're doing that they want to be able to do and they haven't been able to do it, and you provide these types of clear guidelines and where they need to go, and then they implement, right? They take action and do it, and then we see the results. So we have one person who's been able to drive again, right? They weren't able to drive, now they're able to drive, they're able to navigate. Another woman who their family didn't want her to watch their grandchildren. So it put this strain on the family because she was watching the grandchildren. She was responsible, and then there was an incident that occurred where one of the kids got outside of the house and she didn't even realize it. And thankfully somebody came home and saw the kid outside, but that completely ripped away her ability to be alone with the grandkids. And to allow her now, after going through some of these things, to now be able to see her grandchildren and then have the family now have the trust in her to be able to watch those grandchildren and take care of them appropriately. I mean, that's what makes our lives as practitioners, and it's those stories that inspire us to keep going, right?
Brain function is absolutely essential to our lives. Our mind is who we are. Without it, we lose our relationships, our ability to take care of ourselves, our ability to have joy and purpose. No one wants to live in a state of feeling lost and confused or being unsure if they can trust their thoughts. Even just the early stages of Alzheimer's and dementia can be incredibly difficult and painful for all involved. It's sad that we live in a society that tells us that this is just our inevitable fate. We don't have to accept that. We don't have to sit by and watch our loved ones lose their memories and their hope. We can do something. We can make a difference in our lives and in those around us in order to reverse and prevent these illnesses of the mind. Even if the medical establishments and the media won't shout this from the rooftops, we need to. In this series, we truly want to show you that there is hope. In all of these situations that seem so hopeless by the standard of what most Americans know to be true, there is still an answer. There is still hope. Transformation is possible. Hi there, I hope you really enjoyed episode 3 and will put what you learned to good use. Before you go, I just want to remind you that you can still save up to 93% on instant on-demand access to our silver gold packages, but this offer won't last forever. I can only guarantee this massive discount will be available during this world premiere screening, so act now. In the core gold package, we've included our free Jumpstarter supplement pack that has an amazing combo of products specially formulated to give your health a boost and start getting you on track. Our Jumpstarter pack has Gut Repair 360, Cell Defense, Toxibinder, Parapurify, turmeric and ginger with bioperine, and emergency immune support. We want to give you the opportunity to starting detoxing, fighting inflammation, and healing leaky gut so that you can get to see the difference right away. With this package, you'll get the opportunity to begin to transform your health from the inside out.
We want to make sure that you have more than just the information and the supplement starter pack. We want to give you a special gift that will get you started on your personal healing journey. Have you ever wished that you had someone to talk to that was just able to sit down with you and really figure out your health issues? It seems when we go to the doctor's office, the doctor is quick to rush in and out of the room, and many people often feel they aren't fully seen or heard. Considering this, we've added a high-value 40-minute free phone consultation with a health coach who has been specially trained to make sure that you're able to come up with a program that is right for your needs. The value of this consultation alone is worth $199. So make sure you check out all the packages and find out the one that is right for you.
We believe this makes Natural Medicine Secrets one of the best resources of information for you and anyone looking to heal their body with natural medicine instead of side effect-laden drugs. To learn more, just click the link below and get started right now. I'll see you in the next episode, and thank you so much for joining us.